Thank you all for joining us for this session, Finding Profit Growth in a Stagnant Market. Having heard that excellent presentation from Bernard Salt, where we can see that there's a lot of opportunities, our next guest is going to help us how we can really capitalise on them. Nick Boots has extensive experience in senior sales roles in the drinks industry, most recently as Head of Sales and then General Manager for Stone & Wood. He founded the business of beer, his current consultancy, to use his skills as a consultant and advisor to assist small drinks businesses such as yourself address the imbalance in a commercial and strategic experience that exists in Australian beer that is so heavily weighted towards the multinational players. Without any further ado, I introduce Nick Boots.
Thank you, Matt. Thanks, everyone. And Matt and I were just saying it's a bit strange we're not doing a one-on-one interview as it has been for many years. But thank you guys for giving me half an hour of your time, and I hope I can share with you some tips and tricks and insights through my experience that can really help you through what is, a fairly different period for craft beer at the moment. But as we heard from Bernard at the start, we're still in the best place in the world to be in our industry, and the opportunities are endless. But we do need to navigate through the next 12 to 18 months, and I hope I can help you do that with some insights here. So just to set the scene, and I know we've had it a bit this morning and Rich touched on some of these points to begin with, we've got largely a stagnant craft category. We've enjoyed some wonderful hockey stick growth for 10, 15 years, and so many of us have really benefited from that. But that has now flattened out. Whether it's slightly up or slightly down or flat, it's a lot different to the way it was. So we need to change our businesses to allow for that. We've got a pending consumer recession. I think one of Bernard's last numbers was 0.2% economic growth for the last quarter. Now, if you strip out mining out of that and you just take consumables, so the category that we play in, we are in the consumer recession already, I would suggest, even if they haven't defined it, because mining is such a key driver of our economy. Significant cost-based increases. I don't need to share and talk too much about that with you guys. You're well aware of it. Access to market challenges. It's getting harder and harder to get ranging, be it retail or the on-premise environment. We're seeing spirits and RTD come over and really trying to eat the lunch of beer, which is causing more and more issues. And we know the contemporary growth with its competitive price point with the great northerns of the world is also playing an easy bailout role for a lot of beer drinkers to say, hey, I'm not sure I can afford craft anymore, or it doesn't really resonate with me. So it's easy just to go back to contemporary clear glass products because they're on special every week and they're palatable. And then finally, we've got that Gen Z trend for health and well-being is another mega trend. So, all together, you could look at all that and go, oh shit, life is really tough. And a lot of them are really new from the last couple of years. But the fact is, that's where the market is at the moment, and they're challenges I know you've all got. So I'll talk a bit about how I can help. I hope you overcome a number of them. So we know profit equals, revenue minus cost, no revelation there. So we'll talk to the strategies then to increase that profit by increasing that revenue or decreasing your cost base, or in a perfect world, nail both. Graphically, I like this chart. It really illustrates, where we are as an industry, and you can see for a lot of people, revenues, are flatlining there. But I also know a number of brewers who I've spoken to, it is starting to trend down quite significantly. But what is really trending up, we know, is this cost base. And we know what happens when those two hit. It's real trouble. And unfortunately, we've seen a number of brewers already fall into that position. And again, I hope I can educate you guys with some stuff today that will certainly avoid that for you. So we'll talk about some top line growth initiatives, and then we'll talk about some bottom line savings initiatives. So this slide, guys, is about maximising yield. It's not maximising yield in the brew house, because I'm not a brewer. It's maximising commercial yield for your business. So again, the scene in the market at the moment is those unprecedented cost increases. Excise is ridiculous, and it was talked about this morning. The regulatory changes are also bloody ridiculous. I won't get Rich started on them or me, but I know they're impacting all of you. And we've also had a skills shortage in the industry too, which is really pushing up wages. So all in all, they've really made life far more expensive to make the fantastic beers that you all make. Which at the end of the day, leads me, to make this point that if you haven't increased your tap room and your wholesale pricing by circa 10% over the last 2 years, you're probably going backwards in your business. You might not be in negative profit, but certainly your profitability per litre is going to be well below it was a couple of years ago. So be very conscious of that, and don't be afraid to go out to your customer base and have the chat about the impacts of some of these are having on your business and the cost of doing business. And there's absolutely no shame in putting your hand up and saying, I need to take a price increase on my product to keep a strong, sustainable business. As I said, have confidence in the equity of your brand. I speak to so many brewers who just sit there and have sleepless nights and go, oh, if I go up $2 on kegs or 50 cents on my pack, it might halve my volume, etc. The point I want to make here is if everybody as an industry is doing it, and I'm not just talking beer or liquor, but everything, whether you go to Bunnings, Woolies, your local Maccas, etc., everyone's paying a heap more for everything. So consumers are expecting to pay more. So if you're not passing on those costs and you're trying to wear those costs internally yourself and giving yourself sleepless nights, you're probably missing a trick and missing an opportunity. As I said, drinkers are expecting to pay more. Any reasonable customer will understand. You're always going to get your troublesome customers who might try it on or refuse to accept it. But at the end of the day, you need to then ask yourself, is this the type of customer I really want to deal with? Because I would suggest that 95% of reasonable customers will go, I get it. And once you've explained to me all the reasons why you need to take a wholesale price increase, I get it and I'll accept it. And the other thing to consider there is around ABV reduction, pack format change, recipe updates. There's other opportunities too to try and take some pressure off your cogs to maximise that commercial yield on every litre of beer you're making. And the last one there, guys, is around discount investment. Discount spend is inherent in part of what we do in the business. But I implore you to really give some thought to where are you spending that discount money? Is it with the right customers? Are you getting the right return? And even if you weren't to take an aggressive wholesale price increase, if you actually were to dial back your discount, that would actually give you a better commercial yield on your beer as well. So there's a number of ways to skin this one, but I really want to put this up front because I'm really passionate about giving the industry the confidence to put their hand up and say, I'm taking a price increase. And I've had the fortune or misfortune of having time with CUB and Lion in my time, in my days. And if there's one thing they do better, I think, than the independent industry is take price increase twice a year. And they've got dedicated teams, and that's all they do is work on this. And then the number of indie brewers I talk to and I go, so when was your last price increase? And they go, 3.5 years ago. It's like, wow, what could have been? So it's a really important one for you guys to talk about with your commercial teams and responsible people internally. Guys, driving top line growth, again, here, let's talk about portfolio relevance and innovation. So we brew absolutely world-class beers in this country. There's no two ways about that. But again, what I see out there, and please don't take offence to this, anyone, is that so many brewers are brewing the beers that they want to drink or their mates want to drink. And I get it. And that was perhaps fine as a microbrewery early days or as a or brewing at home model, as it were. But if you want to scale into a larger business, you've got to start thinking about, well, how do I appeal to a broader market? Because at the moment, a lot of brewers are brewing beers that probably appeal to sort of 10% of beer drinkers. And if you look at the share of craft beer as a share of total beer, it's about 10%. So this suggests that 10% or less of total beer drinkers actually drink craft. But if you look at total alcohol drinkers, it's less than 5% drink craft. So if we had 20 people stand up now, and then 19 people sit down and one's left standing, that actually is a really good representation of some of the appeal our beers have to the marketplace. And it's a scary thought knowing that, yeah, we have 26 million people in this country, but if we're excluding 95% because of the beers we're making, then we're missing out on that opportunity. We probably don't have the scale in this country to have breweries that brew just one style or a really tight limited portfolio. There are exceptions, absolutely, and there are some doing quite well, but broadly speaking, anybody who just tries to play in a very tight market, you really are limiting your addressable opportunities with just one style, because you're really polarising. So think outside the square and really consider embracing those broader beer trends and beer adjacent styles. And consider the gender and cultural diversity of your local community. So many brewers really want to focus on that local community model, and I'm a big advocate for that. That is certainly a great way to go. But really look in the mirror and go, are the products I'm producing, are they appealing to more than 5% of the drinking adults in my local community area? Because often the answer is no, and that's a scary thought and a missed opportunity. Wanted to share with you this, guys. This is a chart I've pinched from CBC in Nashville this year, and I thought it was a fantastic chart that's relevant to us in Australia too. And this data is not available to us here at the moment, but I think it's fair to assume that we follow very similar trends. So what this is an index of number of individuals in the US who report drinking alcohol once in the last month. So 2004 to 2020, so 16 years. And what it shows here, along the bottom here, in the blue, is white males. So that is predominantly who we're marketing to and making beers for in our industry in Australia, and the same for the US. What you then see is all these demographics and the huge climb in them. And you can see there's Latino females, black males, white females, Asian females, etc., etc. There's a huge growth in them consuming alcohol in the US, and I would suggest it's a similar trend in Australia. We might not have those large demographic groups, Latinos, etc., but we have, as Bernard spoke about, we've got a huge influx of new Australians coming in with immigration. Ask yourself, are you making beers that actually appeal to this hugely growing sector? Because as we've seen, white males, our typical core, there's not a hell of a lot of growth happening in the US, and I'd suggest Australia is probably feeling a little bit the same. Just quickly, again, out of the US, women as a percentage of drinkers. Seltzer up here, over 50%, cider, liquor being spirits, and beer being commercial industrial beer. But craft is actually the lowest, at roughly a third of women as a percentage of drinkers. So, craft in the US is not appealing to women. Again, I would suggest we've got the same problem here in Australia. And then finally here, we've got BIPOC as a percent of drinkers, which is a person of colour in the US. So what are they drinking? And I don't need to read them all individually. You can see again, they're not drinking craft. So my key message here is, guys, consider the total market opportunity and not just your typical traditional white Anglo-Saxon male market that's been so great for us here in Australia. But if you want growth, you need to be appealing to a broader market. I thought I'd touch here, guys, on some portfolio relevance and some great examples that I've seen over the last year. Really topical and only a couple of weeks old is this Balter Cerveza. Like it or not, it's bloody brilliant business. And this will be huge this summer, that you've got a 4% ABV, high grav, tetra hopped beer, contemporary beer that will pump through the CUB supply chain and will be absolutely everywhere. And at $60 retail, will deliver fantastic margin for the brewer as well. So this appeals to that younger consumer demographic who perhaps don't want some of the amazing heavily hot beers that Scotty Hargrave and the Bolter guys are making, but they actually want the Bolter brand and lifestyle experience. So they've created this beer that talks to that market, and that they probably won't have a significant amount of cannibalisation. Hopefully for the beer category, the growth of that product will come out of RTDs, etc., etc. And that's something I think we need to do more of to actually fight back and appeal to other categories who have been, as I said, have been eating our lunch progressively over the last 10 or 20 years. Fruit beer, while it hasn't been a great commercial success to date for CUB and Endeavour, who really championed this brand, and a couple of others, you need to give them a pat on the back for having a go and trying to broaden the appeal of beer. So I hope we see more innovation down this track, and you never know, one of them will eventually bite, and then if we can attract more consumers into beer, then we all win as a beer category. Brookvale Union, I mean, what an example. That brand has to be half the Four Pines business now, if not pushing 2/3. And I would suggest that 95% of drinkers of Brookvale Union products have never had a Four Pines Pale Ale. So they're appealing to a whole new market here with that brand. And the point I want to share there is, if you want to appeal to new markets and new consumer types, you don't just need to use your existing brand. You can actually say, hey, let's create another adjacent brand within our business that might appeal to a different drinker type we're currently not tapping into. So, credit to those guys over a number of years now. That's an absolute juggernaut for them. Seltzer, love it or hate it, seltzer's has been huge and has been good for our industry and using capacity. And I would suggest that at Wayward there, the drinkers that drink the Juicy Peach hard seltzer are not the drinkers that drink, Pete's IPA there. So you've got to be a pat on the back, because that's tapping into probably 100% consumers that would never drink a Wayward product. What happens next with seltzer, I don't know. But you can certainly say that it's been a prosperous number of years and summers for seltzer for us all. I like this one out of the Stomping Ground crew, alcohol-free pine lime sour. There's a lot going on there, but it's something completely new and different. And hey, if it taps into new drinkers for the first time, or perhaps drinkers that have abandoned the category, you go, fantastic. Pat on the back for that. Hot water, another great innovation. This obviously is not the first one, but this is a really good one. I know the Batch guys are doing, and I think that's a great innovation. I think we'll see more of that as well. And again, these are people who probably aren't drinking beer on that occasion, or perhaps don't drink beer at all. But there's a product that's been created that can actually tap in to what they're looking for. And finally, from an innovation point of view, I like what Beer Farm have done down here. For those that don't know, these guys are down in the Margaret River region, and they're fermenting grape skins and created a hybrid ale there with a number of grape varietals there. And it's crazy, it's different, it's innovative, and who knows what it might lead to afterwards. So, well, there's some doom and gloom around the relevance and innovation piece. I also think there's been some fantastic stuff done, guys, and I encourage you all to think about, what else can we do to actually appeal to those drinkers we're not currently appealing to. Let's talk quickly on customer retention and diversification. And again, we're driving top line growth at the moment. Now more than ever, those wholesale trade customers are key for us all, and we know they can be fickle. So I really encourage everyone to really enhance your customer service offerings and make them feel, like they're really valued to your business, and encourage their repeat business, encourage them to keep your tap on, whether it be trade loyalty programs, personalised offers, targeted marketing campaigns, collaboration initiatives. I mean, when was the last time a founder from some of your businesses actually just walked in to a pub they haven't been into for 2 years and said, can I have a beer with the owner or the manager? I just want to say thanks for arranging my beer. And I think they get taken for granted a lot, wholesale customers, but there's so many things you can actually do to lean in and support them. And I think you'll find that support comes back the other way as well. Our next point is about the available channels. There's a lot of channels out there. They are varying in size, but I tried to list them, and I went on from the traditional independent retail and national accounts. Then we've got on-premise groups, and we are seeing more consolidation in the on-premise environment, whether it be the ALHs, the AVCs, the Laundies, the list goes on, and they're quite a sophisticated customer now, and they require a different type of servicing. But then we've got our independent on-premise operators who might just have 1 or 2 venues. We've got our clubs, who are certainly huge up here in Queensland. We've got e-commerce and beer clubs, hugely growing and a huge opportunity. Wholesalers, quick service restaurants and traditional restaurants is a whole nother channel, and tap rooms, and I'll get onto more on tap rooms in a second. We've got stadiums, events and festivals is another channel all of its own, as is duty-free export and actually using some latent capacity for your contract brewing as well. So I encourage everyone to sit down and say, hey, are we really adopting a full multi-channel approach with our sales efforts? And are we tapping into all these opportunities? Because if you've got all your eggs in 1 or 2 baskets, you're really upping your risk there, that if you lose some ranging, etc., in some of these channels, it can have a significant knock-on impact on your business. Let's talk about tap rooms. As I mentioned, again, a credit to Bart for the US BA, and I really like these charts that he presented in March, April over in Nashville too. And what I wanted to share was, this is where the growth's coming from the US, and I think we're seeing it here in Australia too. Again, we haven't got the same quality and level of data, and I might be proved incorrect by some other presentations the next few days, but I certainly haven't seen it. So collectively, tap rooms and brew pubs, however you define them, are seeing some nice growth in total for the last year over in the US. But what really caught my eye when I saw this presentation was brew pubs and tap rooms founded in the last 5 years have grew 20% in 2022 compared to those prior, only 2%. So the message there for me, is really about having a brew pub that is, and a venue that is relevant to your demographic at the moment, and it isn't just the same dive bar, blokey environment, serving dude food, etc., that there's so many of out there at the moment. And I mean, I love them, that's my bread and butter. But again, for 95% of drinkers, they might say, you know what, I just don't feel comfortable there, that's not my thing. And I think that's a reason why new contemporary brew pubs and tap rooms are really showing great growth in the US. They're trying different things, they're new, they're clean, they've got new refresh menus, they've got beer and other beverages that are relevant to a broader demographic. And I think there's some lessons for us to learn there as well. And then again, about that taproom culture and that experience, think about, creating that memorable and engaging experience, because there's so many opportunities just beyond having a bar and your takeaway sales in your taproom. This one was a Stone and Wood event a number of years ago, and for this festival, the place basically became a nightclub, and it was absolutely amazing for the brand, and it was amazing for revenue, etc., etc. Got Huey Doyle from Revel up on the decks there, and it was a super night. And then we look at the tours, etc., etc. Great way to build a brand and revenue and takeaway sales, but merch, food. Tours, as I mentioned, they're all great opportunities, guys, to actually say, how can I maximise the revenue coming out of my tap room, but I can also give people an amazing brand experience. So when they walk back into their local, they're saying, hey, how can I, where do I get this beer, that beer, because I've had it at a tap room and I'm now a huge brand advocate. So